Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of the Saturday Morning Gaming Show. It is May 16th, 2020, and I'm your co-host, The Fat Wizard, joined today by...
Alamaxia.
Hold on, let me take another take on that. And I'm your co-host, The Fat Wizard, joined by...
Alamaxia.
And Lobos.
Today we're playing Donkey Kong Country for the Super Nintendo, and this was released in 1994. So it's been a little bit since we played a platformer, but yeah, this is a really cool one, and I think Alamaxia, you had recommended this for us to check out. So maybe you walk us through a little bit what this game's about.
So Donkey Kong Country is it's really a game that Donkey Kong got his chops. He got his chops back. Instead of getting beat by Mario up on those platforms, now he's in his own adventure, running along, trying to find what happened to all of his bananas. You start out in the game, first level, you pick up a few bananas, and there's a spot in the beginning where if you turn around and go in a cave, you run in, and it's Kong's banana hoard, and you see Donkey Kong he's ashamed. There's no bananas in there. So you are Donkey Kong, and it is your quest to go find all the bananas.
Yeah, actually, I was kind of curious about that banana hoard. As you collect bananas, does that fill up? Does that show progress in the levels? Did anyone go back and look at that area?
It will only show bananas in there whenever you have completed the game.
Okay.
I had the same thought, but also did not venture back to check myself.
So the game is centered around Donkey Kong, but he's got a new companion. And the companion's name is it Diddy Kong? Yeah, Diddy Kong.
Diddy Kong.
Diddy.
And I don't know, was this the first introduction of multiple Kongs? You know, we all knew about Donkey Kong, but it was,
if you want to split hairs, we could go to a Donkey Kong 3, and that had Baby Kong.
Okay.
But,
all right. So
but this does introduce more of a Kong family.
There's Candy Kong. So that's a love interest of Donkey Kong. There's Cranky Kong. I think maybe he's just like the Grandpa Kong.
Yeah, he's the Grandpa.
And then there's Funky Kong. I don't know if there's a relation between Donkey Kong and Funky Kong other than he's just there hanging out.
He's the
and
bro.
He's like carrying a surfboard. He's a bro.
Not literal bro, but bro.
Yeah.
It was 90s. He was totally radical.
Yeah, it's true.
And the ultimate bad guy, I guess, because this Kong was the one that stole your bananas. This was
it wasn't
King.
It wasn't a Kong that stole them.
Oh, it's not. It's like a crocodile.
Yes, King K. Rool.
Yeah. So there you go. That's the plot. Is King K. Rool has stolen your bananas, and you've got to get them back. And you play as Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. So it's a little interesting because you basically control one of them, and at any given time during the level, assuming you haven't taken damage, you can sort of like high-five the other one and switch to playing that one. So you can swap between Diddy Kong and Donkey Kong. And if one of them gets hit and takes damage, they flash and they run off the screen, and now you're controlling the other one. So it's essentially you get two hits before you officially die.
Right. And you won't necessarily have both, though, at the start of a level, depending on if you got hit on the level before. And they have their own kind of physics to them. Not necessarily physics, but like Diddy Kong's a bit faster. I think he jumps higher, and he can cartwheel through enemies. And while Donkey Kong has kind of equivalents, but Donkey Kong is generally slower, but can deal damage to some bigger enemies, whereas Diddy's faster and not as impactful in that sense.
Yeah, and I think they have smaller hitboxes as well.
So it wasn't just me thinking that Diddy jumped higher.
It was really hard to tell. And there was a couple areas where... So again, I didn't use the manual here to start with, but I did eventually look at it just to make sure I wasn't missing anything, because occasionally there's items that are just above your reach, and there's no and usually you're like, okay, there's an enemy I need to jump on to jump a little bit higher, but there's no enemies around, and so I was like, well, is there a way that I can use Donkey Kong to throw Diddy Kong up in the air and pick something up? But I don't think that's the case. I think there must have been some other way to access those areas.
Yeah, sometimes there's like an enemy that will walk by and then not come back and it doesn't respawn, and that was like your one chance to like bounce up and get higher. Yeah. Or sometimes it's just upon you completing like a little hidden area. When you exit it, you'll get shot down from the sky and then you'll collect that item maybe. But there's a lot of hidden stuff in this game. And if I had to sum it in one little statement, it would be to always turn around and go the other way, because the beginning, almost every level at the beginning, if you go left and like try and climb up, there's a secret, and you get, whether it's like one of the letters that you collect, because you collect KONG throughout the level. If you get them all, you get a 1-up, or sometimes there's a barrel that'll take you to a secret area, or who knows? Yeah,
another thing, like you said, you always turn to the left. Another thing I always did is if you find a barrel, hold on to it and look for a wall.
Yeah.
And then often you throw the barrel at the wall and it will explode the wall, and then you can walk into a secret area.
And a lot of times, if you're watching closely, you could look for bananas, and sometimes the bananas will lead you to secret areas. A lot of times, though, the bananas just lead to pain and suffering.
Yeah.
But
so let's talk a little bit about how this game is structured. So there are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I guess we can call them overworlds. Oh no, sorry, 6
stages.
Overworlds. And then of those, there's 6 levels inside of those overworlds, right?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of like Super Mario Brothers 3, basically. You got the big overworld, you got individual levels, little kind of utility stops, whether it's a save point or just kind of a lore spot, and then usually a boss, and then that kind of wraps up that area.
Yeah. So the very first, I'm going to call it world, is Congo Jungle, and a lot of this is, your basic introduction to the mechanics. They've got some jumping to do, some cartwheeling into enemies to do, and I think the level we're on right now is Coral Capers, and this is one where you're swimming around, and, I think often you see the swimming levels and you're like, oh, no, not a swimming level, but I really enjoyed the swimming levels. I don't know what it was about it, but I just really, really kind of clicked with me and I enjoyed it. I don't know. Do you guys have a feeling on the swimming levels we did here?
I love the swimming levels, and I was going to try and interrupt and say it was the music that made it what it was.
Yeah, music was great.
Because that's so calming. The music's so good, and you die and you're like, but the music, it's okay. It's all right.
I really feel like Echo prepared us well for those levels.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
When we were just getting done with Coral Capers, we just showed in the video here one of the pets you can pick up, and the pet name is Engarde, or maybe it's Ingard. Yeah, Ingard the storefish, or Engard the swordfish. And each of these different animals, Donkey or Diddy can ride, and they provide a benefit. I'm going to put benefit in quotes because I feel like some of them aren't great. But the swordfish was fantastic because you can kind of think of it like the frog suit in Mario, where it just makes your swimming controls faster, and it makes it a little bit easier to swim around, and more importantly, because it's got a big, long sword nose, you can run into enemies, like charge the enemies and kill them, and I found that very useful as well.
Yeah, plus they always act as like an extra hit. So if you get hit on it, you lose the little pet that you're riding.
But then not quite. They
you can get it back. You can
they run off, and if you jump on them again, they will. You can. It's sort of like the Yoshi of Super Mario.
Yeah,
World.
Totally.
Okay. And so we are just at the end of the first world here. It's a boss fight called Naughty, and that's with a G, so like Natty, but naughty.
Good naughty.
So it's called Very Naughty's Lair, and it was I guess it was a beaver. Would you guys say?
Yeah, it's a little beaver.
And not because he gnaws on wood. That one's a pretty easy boss fight, and you just kind of jump on his head. And once you get the pattern down, it reminded me a lot of the Super Mario Brothers 3 bosses, where it's just like, all right, you stomp on their head, they're invulnerable for a little bit of time, but if you time it right, you can basically stomp on their head immediately again, and you can just kind of put them in this vicious cycle of not really being able to do much. So pretty easy boss, right? Nothing too crazy there.
Yeah.
After that, you go on to the next world, which is Monkey Mines. We're taking a look at the first level called Winky's Walkway. And as you can see, I've got a little frog that's jumping around here. Now, did you guys see or find these frogs? And I wanted to see what you guys thought about using them.
So the frog for me was... I think I only used it in this level. I really don't even think I found it in any other level, but the frog is great for getting up in those high places and finding barrels that are really just off screen. That's whenever you are looking for those like single bananas that you think, if I jump and get that, I'm probably going to die, but there might be a secret over there, so I'm going to jump anyway.
Might be.
Yeah.
For me, I had a little bit of difficulties because when you're moving forward, he's actually doing a short little hop over.
Yeah.
So it was a little hard to judge the mobility of it, so you wouldn't fall down a chasm. Now, speaking of falling in a chasm, we're in the minecart carnage. This is the first level that I was like, all right, time to buckle down because this game's getting serious. This area here took me quite a while. The idea is you're in a minecart, and there's lots of these, I guess, gaps, and you have to jump over the gaps over and over and over. And a lot of times they're slanted, so it's not as easy as just like, moving on a horizontal line. You really have to time your jumps to make sure that you're landing, at the apex or the valley of the little girders there. And I just found it really difficult to get the timing down. And this one probably took me about 50 tries. I don't know. Did you guys find it easier time?
I played through the game before, so it wasn't too bad. I guess I've probably already been through all of that pain. So
okay.
Yeah, this one in particular was a bit difficult because of those minecarts that do lay in the middle of the track.
Yeah.
Because there's some that are right at the very end of a run or right at the beginning of one, and there's one that every single time I went at it, I hit it. Every single time.
Yeah. Every time. And so you just need to make sure you have Diddy in the minecart with you, right? To let him soak that damage.
Yeah, I'll just throw the little one out and just have Donkey Kong. Yep, that one right there.
That one's right there?
Yeah, that one's pretty bad.
That one, so you have to jump over. So there's a gap. You have to jump over the gap, but then also jump over the minecart on the other side. So that's a little tricky. And I felt like I want to make a statement here and see what you guys think about this, because this level, I think, cemented that the Donkey Kong Country was very much a game about memorization as opposed to being reactive. Because I did feel that in a lot of the levels, it was like you just had to memorize what was in front of you and what was coming at you. And unless you have like superhero lightning reflexes, it was very hard to actually respond to these immediate threats because you had like maybe half a second to a second to actually dodge. What do you guys think about that statement?
I didn't feel like I needed to memorize everything. I did need to remember like maybe one or two parts in each level where I was like, okay, hold back and wait for thing to happen before I do thing. But having watched like speedruns of it and stuff, it is built very meticulously to very much reward going never stopping. And it's wonderful. It's beautiful to watch.
No, I totally agree. And that's why I made that assertion, because I found that if you hold to the right and you know when to jump, often the platforms will arrive exactly where you need them to, and the enemies will be exactly where you need them to. And I think that was brilliant. Once I learned that, I was like, all right, this is actually very, very fun.
Yeah.
So, Alamaxia, I wanted to loop with you on that. How did you feel? Did you feel like memorization is a key part of this game, or were you able to sort of react to what was being thrown at you?
For the most part, reacting served me well, but there are some levels. There's one that I remember distinctly. It was a swimming level in stage 5 that towards the end, there's just a whole bunch of fish that are swimming at you very fast. And that is one of those instances where I did not have time to react and think. I'm just really thankful that I had both Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong there, and I got lucky.
My strategy was using On Guard, the fish there, but I have that in the video. We'll get there a little bit later. So we're on the next level, the Stop and Go station, and I really like this one because if you think of like Super Mario 3, for the most part, a lot of their levels are just kind of like, you're doing the same thing. And that's fine. It's a lot of fun. But this was, with the minecart challenge before this and now this new level, I felt that this game plays around with mechanics quite a bit. So the way that this level works is that you have enemies, and I think the enemies are invulnerable. I don't think you can you're gonna damage them. Mm-hmm. And you have these barrels called stop and go. And if you hit a barrel, actually no, you just have barrels in general. So if you hit a barrel, it will say go, and then if you touch it, it'll say stop. So it's like the red light, green light type thing, right? And when everything is stopped, the enemies all crumble into a little pile, and then you can safely get through them. And so a lot of what you're doing on this level, like to Lobos's point earlier, is you want to basically, each little section you want to complete before the barrel reverts to the green light. And so you're really just going, playing red light, green light. And I love that concept. It was like, this is really cool.
Yeah, I think this is a really good example of that. Like, a lot of times you would arrive at the next go barrel, and it would the previous one would just be wearing out if you held right, So it's very well timed in that sense.
And I love the little just gimmicks that they do throw in the levels. That like, because we had this one, and in a previous level that we had, there was just a ton of barrels that we had to shoot ourselves from barrel to barrel. And the timing can get quite tight with some of them.
Yeah. So I think when I first started playing this game, I was a little worried about the lives because I was playing this. Well, so let me talk about how the overworld works with the lives and everything. So you have a certain amount of lives to I guess spend on a level. When you run out of lives, you basically revert to the beginning of the game or the last part that you saved. And those saves only happen like once every 4 or 5 levels. And so that became kind of stressful when I got to a situation where like I've got 1 life left here. And I know if I lose my life, I'm going to have to replay like 4 or 5 levels. But the way I kind of handled that, and then I had a lot more fun, is I use save states just at the beginning of the level and at the checkpoints of the level. And once I got away from that sense of lives, I really enjoyed it, because that's basically, you can farm up infinite lives, right? That's not a challenging thing. And I think Alamaxia, you were telling some strategies about, once you complete World 1 or Level 1, you can farm Level 1 over and over and over for infinite lives, right?
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter where you are in the world, as long as you have access to Funky Kong. Then you can fly back to World 1 and jump up into Donkey Kong's house, grab the balloon that's in there for a 1-up, and then you hit start, select, and you're back at your level select menu with that 1-up, and you just keep going in there over and over and over and get lives to your heart's content.
So the way I justify this to myself is like, all right, well, let's pretend that I got all those 1-ups, but didn't actually spend the time. So.
Well, let me take this a step further, because I have the same thing, but I did some Googling, and there is an infinite lives trick on the level that we just finished here.
That was the Millstone.
Yes.
Hold on. It was Millstone Mayhem.
Yeah, the Millstone Mayhem. So I just found it on YouTube, but at the very beginning, there's like one of these big enemies, and you can have one singled out kind of walk all the way to the left, and as he turns around to walk back right because he hits the front of the level, if you drop down with Diddy and like hold left and jump, like for whatever reason he infinitely bounces on top, and it basically does a Mario thing where you just rack up lives and it just goes okay. And so I just did that until I got 99, and then
so you didn't need save states. You got the lives legitimately.
Yeah, well, it would be a much faster way than doing the one at a time thing. So
yeah,
very
cool. Well, we did just complete the second world, which is Monkey Mines, and the boss fight was Necky's Nuts. And this was another pretty simple boss because it's I guess, would you call it a parrot?
It's a vulture.
A vulture. And it's a very, very large vulture. And what it does is it comes off from either the left side or the right side of the screen and spits a nut at you. And you have to dodge that nut. And in the center of the screen, there's a tire, and you can jump on this tire to, it acts as like a trampoline, right? And you can jump on that tire to get high and then land on the vulture's nose. And you have to do that a couple times, and then you have completed the boss fight.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say that pretty much every boss takes this pattern of like, you hit it once and enemy does like at the beginning enemy does one attack or whatever, and once you hit it once then it does 2 attacks, then you can hit it, and then it does 3 attacks, and etc. And I think the magic number in this game is 4 in most cases.
I think one of them does a 5.
Yeah,
I think
one
the
is
oil
5.
drum does a 5.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I think the last boss is 3 on everything, but yeah, 4 on the other stuff seems to be the magic number.
Yeah.
And none of the bosses are particularly difficult. I mean,
they're
as a
pretty
platformer, you can definitely tell that they put all the time into level development and not boss.
Yeah. So after that, you move on to the third world, which is called Vine Valley. And we are now in Treetop Town, which actually reminds me a lot of
Star Wars?
The Ewok villages in Star Wars, right? Because it's, I guess any treetop town immediately evokes the Ewoks, but it really is one of those where there are large trees, and then there's the sort of the wooden walkways circling them. And also, I do want to notice, because I've noticed in a couple levels, is the parallaxing on the levels is really great. There's like 3 or 4 levels of parallaxing to give you that depth. And in this one in particular, I think it makes that tree, or it makes it look like a forest, and you see lots of trees and they're moving on different layers, and I thought that was awesome.
This is really a game that made the Super Nintendo look way better than it had any right to look. I mean, this game, for Super Nintendo, this game looks incredible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does. I think the overworlds could have been a little bit cleaner. I think in general they look a little muddy, but I think the levels themselves actually look really great.
Thinking about it, is for the art, for like the characters, are these like images of clay figures maybe, or are they actually...
I thought I read that this was like the first... I don't want to mislabel it, but I thought I read something where they said this was like the first truly rendered game.
Interesting.
And what they mean by that, I'm not sure. I mean, I think the Donkey Kong was a 3D render, and maybe they then rendered out those to sprites or something.
Right.
But yeah, I think this was like, this is a big deal for Super Nintendo. I think it was like the 3rd highest selling game, something like that. But yeah, this game was absolutely huge for the Super Nintendo system. And so I think they kind of, they spent a lot of time, 18 months actually developing this. So that I think that was a considerable length for Super Nintendo
back
game.
in the day, yeah.
Now we're on this level. I really love this level. This is the Forest Frenzy, and one of the things I like so much about this is you hang on to these vines, and they're moving to the right of the screen, and then there's these vultures that are coming at you from the right to the left, and they're trying to hit you while you're on the vine, and you have to move up, and you have to move down, you have to move up. And again, a lot of that was because it takes a while to actually climb up or down. A lot of this was, for me at least, memorization of being like, all right, I gotta be up, down, down, up, and then you kind of position yourself to know where the vultures are coming, because they come from the same angle every time. And then after that, you move on to the Temple Tempest, and this is another. We saw this level or this tile set before on the last one, the Milestone Mayhem, but this was, think of it sort of like an Aztec temple look in the jungle. Of course, you've got vines you're swinging across, but I absolutely love this level because it's got this millstone that is chasing you. There's a little, I guess, like
a beaver, right?
A beaver, yeah, a beaver that is using the millstone as like a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And once you pass him, he will then start coming after you, and I think it's pretty easy to keep up, to keep the pace up so you're not in danger of getting smashed by it. But I really love levels in games where you have to just keep moving, just keep going and improvise and deal with whatever's coming at you. I love levels like that, and they have a couple of those in Donkey Kong Country. See, after that we got Orangutan
Gang.
Yeah, so I don't think there's anything too special about this level. So we can use this to talk a little bit about some of the enemies that we're fighting. There's, so there's crocodiles, and they, as they walk, they kind of like chomp, almost like you think of one of those toys that you wind up and then you let it go across the ground and like the mouth is chomping.
Like little chattering teeth.
Yeah. And I think they make like a clonk, 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 clonk as they're moving across the ground. And those are enemies you can't cartwheel to damage because, they've got big teeth. You have to just jump on them. There's some enemies you can cartwheel to damage, like we saw these little lizard guys that jump around. You can damage them. There's also these bees, which are armored, I guess, because they have spikes on them. And then they have this huge stinger. Like, I don't want to go anywhere near the Amazon if bees have stingers like that. And a lot of times those are just, they move in a certain pattern. So they'll go like left to right or circling a particular thing. And so you very often have to time. So you jump on a thing and don't get hit by the bee. And then you have some of these Donkey Kong impersonators. Like, I was legitimately upset because there's these Donkey Kong guys. I guess they're just gorillas or orangutans.
Those are Manky Kong.
They have the audacity to throw barrels at Donkey Kong, like, roll them on the ground. I'm like, don't you know who I am?
Right.
Can't use my attack on me. And those often come near the end of the stage when I'm already like white knuckling my controller. I'm like, all right, I just gotta hit the exit here, and then all of a sudden these barrels are coming at me. I'm like, no.
I need to just bring up one little peeve I had about this whenever I'd make a mistake on some of these platforming levels. That at least when I notice is if you're making a jump or something like that, and you hit like a bee or something grazes you and you take damage, and you have both Donkey and Diddy. You'll like flicker for a second and pause in midair, and it'll swap to whichever monkey was not active. And then and maybe it's only on specific levels, but that monkey, the new monkey you're controlling, would automatically jump. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
No, it was
Mm-hmm.
Keep going, but I have some thoughts on this as well.
Yeah. And so many times I was not remembering that, and then I would maneuver in such a way as if I was just going to fall straight down, and then it wouldn't work out that way, and I'd die. Like usually on the not minecart levels, but just any sort of like auto scroller thing, and that just that got me killed probably more than anything.
Yeah. So I want to use the Super Mario games as sort of an analogy because when you get hit in a Super Mario game, everything kind of pauses and you're like, okay, let me get my bearings and figure out what's going on, right? Later on in the Super Mario games, they started introducing multiplayer and they did the same thing. So anytime one of your partners would get hit, it would pause everything as well. And that's equally as disorienting as what's going on here. So what you're saying, Lobos, is if you're controlling Donkey Kong and you get hit, he will start flashing, and it makes it very hard to figure out, like, who am I actually controlling? At what point does it actually switch over to Diddy Kong? Further compounding the confusion is Donkey Kong will run off, but in running off, he'll actually collect bananas.
Oh, nice.
So he's still like an active participant collecting stuff. So I'm like, am I collecting the bananas? Or, and very often, I would just like immediately eat it with the other character. Like if Donkey Kong was getting hit, Diddy Kong was not far behind in taking damage.
Yeah. There were some levels where you'd have a platform that was auto-advancing under you, and getting hit was a death sentence because that platform would just keep going, and you would lose your momentum from the jump. Because that was another thing I found annoying is a lot of times I would be in the middle of a jump, get hit, and well, there goes all my forward momentum, and I just drop down into the abyss.
Yep. No, sometimes oddly enough, the auto jump that was happening on your newly controlled character would sometimes actually get you up to the platform you needed to be. So sometimes that worked out in the favor, but not often. we're on the boss fight of Vine Valley, World 3 Vine Valley, and it's Bumblebee Rumble. This one's a fun one. It's just a huge bumblebee, and on either end of the screen, there are some barrels you can pick up. And you basically just hold the barrel and wait for this bee who's kind of moving in a sine. If you think about like a sine or cosine wave pattern, kind of up and down, he's moving in a pattern like that, and he just kind of comes down, and when he's on your level, you throw the barrel at him, and it hits him, and you do that a couple times. So nothing too crazy there. After that, we're on to World 4, which is Gorilla Glacier. So I think this is another one of these where there's not a whole lot going on. So let's use this opportunity to talk a little bit about how you actually get your... So if you're playing as one of the Kongs, how do you actually get your buddy Kong? And we see that periodically through the level, there's these barrels that have a big D on them. And you hear some kind of like rumbling in there. You know, you hear like it sounds like there's a monkey in there, right?
Oh yeah, and they each have their own voice too.
Yeah.
So it's a DK barrel, and if you're playing as Diddy, you'll hear kind of a lower when you get close, and that's Donkey, and then you hear the annoying screeching of Diddy if you get there as Donkey. He's like.
I kind of view, I don't know. I don't know if people like Diddy. Maybe he's like the Toad of Donkey Kong lore, wherever he's like he's there and no one really likes him, and so I don't know if Diddy is particularly enjoyed.
I think he grew
he does
on
have
the
a very
audience.
What was that?
I think he ended up growing on the audience. Especially after, N64, they made a whole racing game for him.
Oh, yeah, they did. Diddy Kong Racing is really good.
Diddy Kong Racing, yeah.
So I would typically use... So I started off using Diddy all the time because I just liked his speed better. Until I got to levels where it was really easy to take damage, or I needed that maneuverability for later in the level. Then I would play as Donkey so that when I did get hit, I got left with Diddy. Because if it was the other way and I got left with Donkey, I'm like, well, crap, I'm going to be slow and what a waste. So it was kind of interesting that I swapped my philosophy.
I liked Donkey Kong, especially because later on there's these large, I want to get their names here, but there's these large like army rhino guys. And if you stomp on them...
They're called clumps with a K.
Clumps. If you stomp on with Donkey Kong, you can take them out. Yeah. But if you hit them with Diddy Kong, they're just gonna smack you away, and they put their hands on their hips and they just laugh at you. I'm like, wow, rude. So we're on the let's see here. We're on Slipside Ride, I think. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was some of the secret areas, because there's a bunch of different mini games, and often the mini games involve hitting letters. So in this particular one, there's probably, let's say, 7 or 8 letters, and they're all arranged in a circular pattern, and they're spinning around, and one of them's flashing, and you have to jump and hit that one, and then once you hit that, another one flashes, and you have to hit it, and you have to hit all of them, and at the end you get an extra life. Mm-hmm. There was another one we just did, which was there are 4 barrels, and they are all cycling through the letters K-O-N-G and then a banana. And so you basically have to spell Kong. And if you do that without messing up, you get an extra life. One of my favorite things, and we're going to see this, is Diddy Kong's reaction to failing one of these video games. Did you guys, or one of these mini games, did you guys see that at all when you're on your playthrough?
I do. Yeah, he gets mad he takes his hat off, right? And
he takes his hat off and he like stomps on it. Yeah. And I was like, I every time I did that, I just laughed, because it's just like a little donkey throwing a temper tantrum. So I left that in the video a little bit later on down the show here.
Nice. Also, there are a couple of other secret stages or bonus stages where periodically you can find these large coins that are shaped like your little companions, the animals that you can ride. And if you collect 3 of them, then you get taken to these bonus stages that are unique to that particular animal, and you ride around and you try and collect as many bananas as you can. And for every 100 bananas you get, I think you get an extra life, and you have something like 90 seconds to do it all. So it's not necessarily like, I guess there's a challenge if you want to try and get as many as you can, but it's not something that you can really fail. So it's more.
Did you guys find any of the hidden areas within those?
Ooh,
no. Oh, yes, I did actually. I did.
So each one of the animal companions has a hidden area, and it's usually somewhere that's going to be off to the upper right. Like you kind of have to out of bounds yourself over the level, but you'll find an area where you have bananas that'll spell out X2, like ×2. And whenever you collect those bananas, it will multiply your banana inventory by 2. So you could collect 250, 300 bananas from the level, make your way there, and in the very last seconds, grab that and multiply yourself up to like 700s and get a whole bunch of lives.
Nice.
Oh. Now, is that the same? Because the one that I found had a giant banana, a giant gold banana, and I thought that one just added a ton of bananas to my inventory.
It might be different for each one. Was that the frog one?
No, I think it was
the bird
in guard. This one, okay. The dolphin or the swordfish rather.
Yeah, because I remember the rhino and the bird specifically had a ×2 that I collected.
Okay. That's cool. I only found that one, and it was kind of an accident. And I guess I didn't really think to look in other ones for that. But that's cool.
That's awesome. I didn't find any of that. One thing I did notice, when you leave these bonus areas, generally they put you a little bit ahead of the level, so you can kind of bypass something. I will say though, on that minecart level that we talked about way back in World 2, that I have a lot of difficulties in, I found one of the bonus stages, and so I completed it, and it sent me back to the very beginning. I was like, are you kidding me? Now, so kind of getting back on track here, we just are completing this level called Croctopus Chase. It's another underwater level, and this one was cool because it has these, they're like little squids, and as you pass them, they turn into, it almost looks like a saw blade, and it just goes through the world, and you have to, go faster than it, and eventually it will find a little nook and get stuck there. But you have to make sure to go faster than it, otherwise it will hit you and kill you. And those were exhilarating. I was like, oh, gotta swim fast, gotta go. And then after that, you go on to another cool level, which was, I think this is the only level that really plays with lighting. It's a Torchlight Trouble. And at the very beginning of this level, you get a parrot. I think the parrot actually has a name. Let's see if it's on here. Is this Squawks the parrot? Yeah.
Yep.
Squawks the parrot. And what he does is he holds a lamp for you. And otherwise, the area is very, very dark. Now, it's not completely dark. You can still sort of see some of the ledges, so you wouldn't need a light to complete this. But it definitely makes it a little bit easier to see because there's a bunch of moving platforms on that level and saw blades and stuff. But yeah, again, if you knew how to speedrun that level, it would be very satisfying to just be like, all right, run to the right, jump, run, jump, and then complete it without having any sort of light.
Yeah. There is one other level that plays with light, and it's like the stop and go one, remember? And then you can turn the lights on and off. Instead of stop and go barrels, there's on and off barrels, and the lights will turn off, and then you have to hit the barrels to turn the lights on, and you just kind of continue through the level that way.
Okay, I think that might. We'll find out. It might be Blackout Basement coming up here.
But that is the only level with Squawks the Parrot.
Yeah, they didn't have too many appearances of him, and you cannot ride him.
No, you can't. He will just follow you. He's very, very small.
Yeah.
Donkey Kong looks like he's pushing, I don't know, 600-700 pounds. Squawks is probably like 5.
So did either of you find it difficult on that particular level with Squawks when you're trying to line yourself up on one of those moving platforms? You're kind of moving your D-pad left and right, and Squawks just his light keeps flashing left, right, left, right. And it got so disorienting sometimes.
So I didn't have a problem with that. I did have a lot of problems with, so you can jump, but then you can also do a long jump if you hold down the run button. But the run button will also cause you to do a cartwheel.
Oh, yeah.
And so often I'd be at the narrow, at the edge of a ledge. I'm like, all right, hold on the run button and cartwheel off the ledge.
Yes, although there is a mechanic that I think is intended to be used in some places where you can roll like probably your entire monkey's height off of a ledge, and then you can still perform a jump and jump in midair.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So often I would see little, so like the little letters, like a K.
Yep.
At the bottom, at the bottom of a chasm, I was like, are they expecting you to sacrifice a life to pick up one of these?
Yeah, some of those you could. Some of them I couldn't figure out. Like there was something else to do, but any of the ones that are just kind of almost at the same level as the terrain, but a little bit lower, you can just cartwheel off and then do a jump after you grab it.
Yeah. Oh man, I wish I would have known. I probably wouldn't have gone from anyway because it sounds a little risky. But yeah, that's cool.
Now, speaking of abilities you could use, did either of you use Donkey Kong's ground slap ability?
I did because so I remembered that it existed. I think you can slap like barrels out of the ground if you didn't jump on them. Is that right?
Yeah, so it was pretty much used, I think, where if you didn't have the height to jump down on those soft spots on the ground, then I think Donkey Kong could just slap the ground to get something out. But I almost wanted to say that there were other areas in the game where if you slap the ground, you could maybe get just like a bunch of bananas pop out. It's not something particularly highlighted, but this is a game where if you went around just slapping all the grounds, you could probably find a lot more hidden stuff than you think.
I want to say that there might have been an enemy or two that also gets like stunned or knocked down whenever you did it, but I didn't do any of this playthrough. It's just something I remember from.
So I wonder if because sometimes there's those vultures that throw nuts down, and I wonder if you can stun them.
Oh, interesting.
By using the slap. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit ago, we just completed World 4, and we fought Really Naughty Rampage, and that is essentially the same fight as the first Naughty we did. He's bigger. I don't remember if he really does much. I think he's just pretty much stomp on his head. And
I think he's faster, but that's a little bit faster. That's about it.
After that, you move on to world number 5, Krem Croc Industries, Inc., and we just completed Oil Drum Alley, and now we're on Trick Trock Trek. I love this level because it's a little platform, and it's got a predetermined path, which you can see. And wait, no, this isn't the one I'm thinking of, is it? Is this one of the oil drums?
No, it's not the fuel one.
Oh, it's not that one. Okay, we'll talk about that.
It's a precursor.
But yeah,
this is the intro to the mechanic.
Ooh, yeah. So this one is just a platform, and it moves along, and you have to make sure to stay on it. And meanwhile, there's some of those bees that you have to jump over to stay on the platform. Sometimes there's these little beavers that jump on the platform from above, so you have to dodge them. And really nothing too crazy here. There's this one scene where there's one of those, what did you call them, a croc or crumps?
Clumps?
Clumps? Yeah, I don't know if it's in this video, but one of the clumps will just stay at the top, and he looks like he wants to come down, but he actually never will, and I wasn't sure...
Oh, interesting.
If that was a bug or what. I want to see if this is on the video, if I kept it on here.
He might be someone that you're...
Yeah, I think it's this one right here.
Oh.
He just... Nope, not this one. Okay.
He might be one that you're intended to try to get up on top and jump off to reach a special area.
Could be. Yeah. But this is one of those that it's kind of a long level, and there's a lot of mastery to it. And then at the very end, there's one of those gorillas, orangutans, shooting barrels at you, and that one I think clocked me once or twice.
They really love putting one last thing after you've done the big gauntlet. You're like, all right, I'm done, and then it's just like a beaver or the dude throwing barrels, and you're like, what?
Often there's here's the part where I failed the mini game, and Diddy's like, I'm so angry. Yeah, often you get to near the end of the level. I'd say like once you've completed 90 to 95% of the level, you'll find a little arrow. It's like pointing you to the right generally. And it's like, hey, you're almost there. And then that's where they throw like the one more thing. And once you complete that, then it's like, all right, cool. Then now you have an exit sign that you know that you've actually hit the end. Yeah. So let's see what we're on now. Is this...
A lot of rope climbing.
I don't know what level this is.
I think we are still on Trick Track Trek. I think we're still on this.
I think you're right. It's either that or Elevator Antics.
One thing I want to point out with the level design in this game that I noticed right around this point in Crime Croc Industries is how each level introduces mechanics and how they expand on those mechanics as you go through it.
Absolutely brilliant how they add on to those.
Because they'll start out with this new obstacle you've not seen before, like what we saw before. There were some enemies above us on platforms, and as our cart rolled under them, they jumped down on us. We haven't seen that before this. They started out with an enemy we could easily kill, then 2 enemies, then maybe 3 enemies, and then we go through another little transition part, and okay, now we have bigger enemies that are falling down on us. So they start you out with 1, then 2, then a complexity of them, and then they kind of reset that complexity thing and introduce another new mechanic, but maybe build on what you just did a little bit. And I feel like they did such a great job because every level had some kind of new little thing that they did.
Yeah, I think the level we just completed, Elevator Antics, was a great example of that because they had those elevators that go up and down. Think about like the Underworlds in Super Mario 1 where they have, things you have to jump. It's lowering and you have to jump on that and catch one that's rising. But these are minecarts that are raising up and down. And so the first time you do it, you just jump across, no big deal. And the second time, it's like, all right, and now there's a B in between them. Yeah. So you have to time the lowering of one elevator, the rising of another one with a B sitting there. And then there's like multiple ones you have to jump on. So yeah, they really do a good job of introducing the mechanic and then making the player master the mechanic. After that, we're on Poison Pond. And I think if I'm looking at the levels right, I think that every single world has one underwater level. And so this one is it's like the water is all green. With the name Poison Pond, I was expecting there to be some sort of poison mechanic or timing thing, but nope, it's just green water that looks disgusting. The big thing here is that there's these saw blades that will move up and down in predetermined patterns. And so a lot of it was just learning when to go, which makes it a lot easier when I have the on guard fish here because he makes it easier to swim quicker. And I think Alamaxia, this is the part that you were talking about.
That is the exact part. I died.
Just a ton of fish coming at you.
That was such a difficult part for me because, like you said earlier, that was the memorization thing. I had to remember. Okay, fish up top, fish in middle, fish up top, fish on bottom. Where's my safe spots?
Well, and they also will respawn because when I tried to do that without on guard, the fish, which will stab them all, I tried to go to the right a little bit to spawn the ones and then go to the left to sort of deal with it. And then I found that they would respawn. So you have to just keep moving forward here.
Yeah.
After that...
Oh, I was going to say, it's not only fortunate that the Kongs can breathe underwater, but they're also immune to poison. So that's good.
Yeah. I mean... you got to think though that all these years dealing with Mario has really probably built up your immunity and hardened your skin.
That's true.
After that, you go on to Minecart Madness, and after this is the second minecart level, and after my experience in the second world, I was like, okay, I'm better pull up a drink on this one because this one will take a while. But I think by the time I was on this one, I kind of just figured out the mechanics. You get a feel for how Donkey Kong moves and how the timings of enemies work, and I actually felt that this one was fairly easy compared to the first minecart level.
I loved this level. I loved it because of how you were able to really explore the different ways you could bounce off enemies to progress yourself. And there were even some areas where in the previous minecart level, when you jumped, your minecart jumped with you. In this one, you're jumping out of the minecart. So there are parts in this level where if you jumped out of the minecart and let yourself fall, there were secrets down there. And you could sometimes fall into another minecart.
At the very end of that level, I did this a couple times. If you miss the high jump to actually get to the end of the level and you take a lower jump, you'll actually go into a little secret area. And that was cool.
Rewarded.
But a lot of times those don't really give any indication. It's sort of like a blind jump, right? So you don't know that it's there until you accidentally do it.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing where you're like, man, wait, what? Oh.
Yeah. So the next level after that is Blackout Basement. I think this is one, Lobos, you were saying, that also deals with lighting. And this one, it turns on and off the lights on its own, right? So you don't have the ability to turn on the light or manipulate it like you did with the Squawky one, but you can time out your jumps. And this is another level I really, really loved, because often you would see like a sequence of platforms and you knew that the light wasn't going to stay on for the whole time. So you're like, all right, I'm going to time my jump for this one. I can see my jump for this one. And by the time I make that second jump, the light will turn on and I can figure out what I need to do on the third jump.
And then right after that third jump, you have some crocodiles that would come in and nom your ankles.
Yeah, exactly. This one, again, benefits from memorization, and definitely something you could just, if you knew the pattern, you could just jump at all the right spots. Again, you can kind of make out the area. So I suspect, if you wanted to cheat, you could probably turn up the gamma of your TV quite a bit higher here and not have to worry about the lighting. Yeah, old school, yeah. And then after that, we've got the fifth boss, Dumb Drum. This is a very unique boss because you're not actually jumping on a boss. You're jumping on what is spawning, or what the boss is spawning, which is just normal enemies. And so when it first spawns, or when it first comes in and fights, it shakes out like two little, just basic enemies. Mm-hmm. And actually, no, it tries to like stomp on your head, and then it will shake out an enemy, and then you kill those enemies, and then it repeats a sequence, and it increases the difficulty of those enemies each time. And so by the very last time, it's spawning two of those clumps, those rhinos with the helmets. Actually, no, the last thing is these armadillos, which move around very, very quickly. They were so hard to hit.
Mm. And you have to hit them twice sometimes.
Yeah, you do, because they roll up into a ball and they just charge at you, Sonic style almost. And you knock them once to get them out of the ball, and then they're kind of stunned, and then you have to then stomp on them again to actually kill them.
Oh, here's that level.
Yes, Tanked Up Trouble. So after you complete that world, you move on to the Chimp Caverns. Level 1 here is Tanked Up Trouble. I absolutely love it. It's the platform that moves on a predetermined path, but this time you have to collect oil drums, and there's an indicator on the actual elevator. It goes from green to red. It actually slows down when you go to red. And basically what you do is you have to collect all these oil drums to keep it fueled. And if you don't keep it fueled, it will fall off the platform and you cannot progress because you need the platform to continue onto the level. But as far as I could tell, you can't skip any of the oil drums. I think it's positioned such that you have to collect every single one.
You could skip one here or there. What I typically would do is wait till the last second to collect a fuel tank.
Yeah.
Because sometimes one would fill it all the way to full. So if it was at 4, it would fill it to full. But if it was at 1, light left, then it would still fill it to full. So you could make them last a bit longer that way. But for the most part, you just want to collect all of them.
Yeah, because when it hits full, it doesn't. It's like a hard cap. It doesn't say, okay, you're full, but plus whatever. It's like, nope. You wasted the majority of your oil on that one. So yeah, that's a good strategy to save those oils for the very last minute. And then after that, you go on to Maniac Mincers. So this is a level that's set in a cave with just a bunch of these saws that go up and down. Again, I like levels that have this timing element. I don't know why. I'm a big fan of that.
You can really plan out your attack, and sometimes the bounces you can get, you're like, oh, that was so close. I feel the same way. I love levels like this.
So I just picked up a rhino and immediately jumped into him. I jumped him into one of the saw blades, and his eyes just kind of bug out there, and he runs off. And I was like, well, you served your purpose,
yeah, exactly.
Rhino. You took a point of damage for me, so. I guess in my opinion, the pets weren't all that useful, and usually I just used them to kind of just like damage boost my way through the area. Yeah, take a hit. Yeah. So let's see here. Oh yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention was the mini games. sometimes they gave you the opportunity to, they were games of skill, and you could get, bonus lives, bonus bananas or whatever. But sometimes you would end up dying, and it would just like, all right, well, you didn't actually lose a life. You just can't progress on the minigame. And so there was another level that was like that, where there's a bunch of, or another mini game that's like that, where there's a bunch of crocodiles, and the crocodiles, they don't appear to die. Maybe they do if you hit them enough, but every time you stomp on their head, they'll spawn another cluster of bananas. And the idea is you just have to keep bouncing on their heads to spawn lots of clusters of bananas. Did you guys ever figure out how to do that? I couldn't ever
I
hit
finished
them more than like 3 times.
I finished one. The one with nearer the end that had more of them. Basically just made it so you could just bounce like the entire time. Bounce off one, then the second, then the third, then the first is back up again. You can bounce off it. And if you
Did you get anything...
If you bounce enough times, I think they gave you a balloon at the end, and you would finish the minigame.
So the balloon is like an extra life, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
And you didn't have to actually do a continuous bounce on those. You could line yourself up and hit them again.
Yeah. Yeah. The next level we're on is Loopy Lights. So this is the next level. Actually, I guess there is another level.
This is the one I was talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So this uses lights, and this is one where you, instead of the stop and go barrels, they are on and off barrels. And so you go ahead and hit the barrel to turn it on, to turn on the lights. The tricky thing in here is they introduce a new crocodile. At least I think this is the first time they introduce it.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you jump, the crocodile jumps also. And so often you're like, I'm going to jump on this crocodile. And the crocodile's like, I'm going to jump up and eat your ankles.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I would end up dying.
Yeah, it works really counter to the whole like hold right and jump, because if you do that, you'll just jump right into them. So if you're going to try and jump over or on top of one, you're best off stopping, just jumping straight up, and then in midair, as you're descending, then hold right and then land on them as they get close to you.
Exactly. So like as they're declining on their jump, you're basically declining on top of their head.
Yeah, because I think they either fall faster than you, or they just don't
jump
as high.
I think they fall a little faster. Yeah. It's actually one of the two there. But yeah, so this is another area where, or this is another level where I ran into a situation where I kind of ran out of time, and I had to complete some of the level in the dark. And again, you can kind of see where you need to jump, And so and also the enemies have eyes, like white eyes, so you can clearly see the enemy where they are, even without the lights on. And I really appreciated that, because in this last area here where you have tons of these bees moving back and forth, this was again holding my controller super tight. I was like, I don't want to mess this up, because this is kind of deep into the level here.
Yeah.
So I loved Loopy Lights here. And then the last of the levels, the actual platforming levels we have, is Platform Perils. And so this is, I think, just kind of another run-of-the-mill level. The tricky thing here is there's a bunch of these panels you jump on, and as you jump on them, they move in the direction that they're pointing. So some of them point down, and so they'll fall down, and some of them like point to the right. And you have to jump on them and then, stay on them until you get to the next platform that allows you to move, jump on that one to continue the level. I think the tricky thing on this level, though, is it's not always to the right. Sometimes you have to go to the left, and it wasn't immediately obvious that you had to go to the left. So I ran into a couple situations where I was like, how do I progress here? Because there's nothing like this platform is moving to the right and it's falling, but I don't see anything to the right that I can jump on. So what do I do in this situation?
Yeah, I definitely had the first one or two times through particular sections, I would just stand there, and then the platform would just like kind of fall, and then I would be like, oh, that's where I was supposed to go. Okay, now I know for next time.
Yeah.
But that level in particular is the one that I had the most trouble with. The whole, you get hit in midair, and your character would jump right after, because there's a platform below you that you're waiting to move, and it was a mess. But yeah, it was fun.
So we're on the penultimate boss here. This is Necky's Revenge, And the way that this works is it's kind of the same fight we fought earlier with Neki, where his head's coming off either left side or the right side, and he spits nuts at you. But in this situation, you have to wait for all the nuts to be spat at you before you can jump on his head. So the first time, and there's a tire in the very center that will allow you to propel. So the first time he spits one nut, and you hit him on the nose, and then he comes back and he spits 2 nuts. And so each time, like by the time you're dodging like 3 or 4 nuts, it's a little chaotic because you're trying to time the the descent of your jump to be able to actually land on Neki's head before he goes off screen. Yeah. So that was a little challenging. And then you get to the very, very end boss fight. So you basically go from one boss fight to the other. And this one's called Gangplank Galleon. Who wants to talk about how this fight works?
I like this fight a lot. The music is also a classic track that a lot of people like covered and stuff, and it's a favorite of many from this game. But King K. Rool is you infiltrate his pirate boat. He's probably a pirate, right? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a pirate.
He's a king of the crocodiles, and the fight's pretty easy. He throws a little crown, and you jump over the crown, and you can bonk on his head. Because otherwise, if you jump on his head while he's wearing the crown, that's sharp and that hurts.
Oh yeah.
And it does the whole thing of the pattern where you add one iteration of whatever he's doing each time you hit him. So when he'll throw the crown, you jump on him, then he'll charge across the screen. Then he throws the crown, you jump on him, he'll charge across the screen, and then he'll charge again for a second time. After you do that 3 times, then he bounces away, and a sequence of cannonballs will fall from the sky, and the way you dodge them is you basically they always fall in the same lines, and you can stand to the side, and after it kind of bounces, you can move to where that cannonball was that just fell, and then you can dodge the rest of them. So you only really need to dodge 1 cannonball per series of cannonballs.
The way I usually did that was as the one in front of me was falling, I was jumping over that one. So the one that falls where I would be, I'm not anywhere near. So it took a little bit of strategy to get right. But then you do 3 rounds of that, and then it rolls the credits, right, Lobos?
Yeah, and the game's over, and you win. The end? ?
And then he immediately gets back up and jumps over you. And I think my reaction was like, I don't know, jump. And he jumped into me as jumping. I was like, oh, okay. But then he's got one more sequence there. And in this situation, he's actually like hopping over you. So he does, again, the same thing where he hops over, or he doesn't hop over you. You have to run under him as he's hopping, right? So he hops to one side of the thing. You jump on him when he throws his crown out again. And then he hops to one side, and then he does that again, and then, like the 2, 1, 2, and 3 sort of thing. And then after that, you win the game.
You
stomp
win.
On his head, you win. Yeah, and Cranky, you go back and see Cranky, and he's like, "Hey, I added something to your banana board or whatever."
He'll yell at you. And he yells at you if you missed any secrets. So
yeah, I was gonna say he'll berate you and say, "I would have gotten everything if I was playing me." There's a lot of fourth wall breaking in this game.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah, it was good, very good.
And then it just kind of ends with I love these in older games, is where they do like the cast of characters.
The enemies
in the credits.
too.
Yeah, the enemies, they just kind of scroll across the screen, and they play like a little animation, and then they have the name under them. And so one of my favorite things is near the end of this, Cranky Kong goes across the screen just like, "It's my turn yet. It's my turn." And then he's like, "No, it's my turn." So yeah, a nice little game. I really enjoyed my time with this. I think for me, it took a little bit of while to warm up to. But once I started using save states to pretend I had infinite lives, I had so much more fun on the game. So, and this would have been a great game to pick up around the Super Mario. I think, did this come out before Super Mario Land? I think it did.
World or
sorry, yeah, World.
And I think World was was it launch or no?
World was
no, it wasn't. It was actually.
Oh, it wasn't. Oh shit. I don't rember actually. I don't remember the timing of that.
I'm almost positive this was after.
Yeah.
It was in 1990. Okay, so this was like 4 years after? Okay. All right, so it had one heck of a legacy to live up to, and I think they did a pretty good job on it.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic game. And this one in particular, for me, has a ton of memories behind it. Because I distinctly remember this game with my cousins playing this with them in their basement. And we would basically take turns, just controller, hand off. All right, you died, now it's your turn. And we would always just try to 100% the game as fast as we could. Because I mean, they had it, and this was a game that it really did reward going back and playing those levels, because at the end, Cranky yells at you, you didn't find all the secrets. Well, just because you beat the game doesn't mean you have to stop playing. At the end of all of this, you can just, you go back and you can keep playing the levels, you can find all of those secrets. And it was just a lot of fun, and so many hours playing this.
Dude, so what happens when you collect all the secrets? Does he say anything?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'll be honest, it's been so long I can't remember, and I didn't do it this time.
Well, that's Donkey Kong Country. We want to thank everyone that listened to us on the podcast here. And, of course, give a big shout-out to all of our Patreon supporters for helping, keep the Saturday morning gaming show operational. If you want to support us, head on over to patreon.com/Saturday morning gaming show. And you can learn more about some of the rewards we have there.
We've been traveling back through time in these video games. What are we going to be playing next?
So this is one that I will firmly say that it's on my top 10 of all time game list. And I think it's going to be more of a product of the time, but I still love it. And I actually have a speedrun out there that I did for one of Lobos's events. But this one is Quest for Glory 1. On the PC.
Now, are we
this
doing
is an
the
old
one?
Yeah.
Or are we doing the slightly less old one?
They're about both old. Yeah. We are going to be doing the VGA one. So there's an EGA, I believe it is, or is it CGA? I can't remember. And the colors and stuff are not that great. There was a couple years after. Oh, and also that one was one of those that was a text parser. A couple years after that game came out, they did a point-click re-release with better graphics, and it was much better. So we're going to be playing a slightly updated version of Quest for Glory 1. I love this game because it kind of introduced me to the concept of like an RPG, because it's a point-and-click adventure game, but you still have like character stats. And, like some of the ways you solve puzzles are going to be based on both your class and your stat progression. So we're actually going to all choose different classes to play, but I don't want to get too much into it. We'll talk about that on the next episode. So sadly, we have reached the end credits of this one, and we wanted to thank everyone for listening to us on the podcast.
And we do release our podcast monthly, so be sure to follow and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google, or whatever your platform of choice is.
And if you have any feedback for us, we'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at SaturdayMorningGamingShow@gmail.com.
Or follow us on Twitter at SaturdayMGaming.
There's also Discord you can check out. That link is on the Saturday Morning Gaming Twitter. We'd love to have you join us in the chat room as well. And of course, we wanted to give a special shout out to TechnoAxe for much of the music this episode.
For Saturday Morning Gaming, I'm Alamaxia.
And I'm Lobos.
And I'm the Fat Wizard. We'll see you in June with Quest for Glory 1 for the PC.